Game of Thrones Season 5 and 6 were largely beloved, but the changes to the Dorners plot were pretty bad. In the books, Princess Arianne tried to crown Myrcella Baratheon as a queen, but someone ratted her out. Who did it and why? Let's start with a quick refresher. Arianne is the eldest child of Prince Doran Martell. She had a younger brother named Quentyn and an even younger brother named Trystane. Down in Dorne, a man does not come before a woman in the line of succession if the woman is older. So Arianne expected to inherit Dorne. One day, she found a letter that stated that her younger brother Quentyn would inherit Dorne, and it was true. But it was not the entire story. Doran and Oberyn made a secret pact with Sir Willem Darry to marry Arianne to Viserys Targaryen. In other words, Doran had planned on Arianne becoming the queen of the Seven Kingdoms, and thus he had planned on her younger brother Quentyn inheriting Dorne. Unfortunately, Arianne did not know about this plan, so she attempted to use Myrcella to make some moves. Tyrion had sent Myrcella down to Dorne in order to forge an alliance with them so as to keep them from teaming up against the Lannisters in the War of the Five Kings. Since Myrcella was older than Tommen, Arianne felt as if Myrcella had been robbed of her birthright, just as Arianne herself was being robbed of Dorne, and she tried to rectify that. Myrcella had been accompanied down to Dorne by a handmaiden, some Lannister guards, and Sir Areo Hotah of the Kingsguard. Arianne seduced Aerys and convinced him to help her sneak Myrcella off to Hellholt, where she'd be crowned as queen. Unfortunately, when they got to the pole boat, Areo Hotah was already there. Darkstar attacked Myrcella as Oakheart charged Hotah. Myrcella survived, though her face was mangled and she lost an ear. Oakheart was not so lucky. Hotah took off Oakheart's right arm at the shoulder, then removed Oakheart's head with a two-handed slash of the axe which he had wed. Arianne asked Hotah how her father had known, and Hotah said, "Someone told. Someone always tells." In her next chapter, Arianne was imprisoned, and she thought about Hotah's words, not once, not twice, but 8 different times. Someone told, she thought, over and over. There was a paragraph about her anger at having been betrayed by someone she trusted, someone she had loved. And when she finally met up with her father, she tried to get him to tell her who it was, but he wouldn't do it. In Arianne's first sample chapter of The Winds of Winter, she continued to wonder who it was. The point I am getting at is that an argument could be made that Doran found out through his own informants. But George R. R. Martin hit on the mystery of the betrayer so many times that it's reasonable to assume that someone ratted her out. So who was it? Arianne had 5 companions, 3 of her dearest friends from childhood, Sir Areo Hotah and Darkstar. Arianne entertained the idea of Darkstar and Oakheart, but she concluded that Darkstar didn't make sense, and I am with her. Darkstar had tried to kill Myrcella. On top of that, Arianne was not close to him, so it wouldn't hit as hard as a betrayal if it was him. The second person whom Arianne considered was her lover, Sir Areo Hotah. Arianne wondered if Oakheart had loved Myrcella more than her, and if he was so ashamed of what he'd done that he threw away his life by charging Hotah. So Arianne considered Oakheart as an option, and some fans do as well. One argument that I've seen is that Oakheart wore the white cloak of the Kingsguard that day so that he would be noticeable and get caught. However, Doran told Arianne that he knew about her plot before she carried it out. Doran said that he had found it hard to believe that she could conspire against him, so he waited for her to make a move in order to learn the truth. If that is true, and Oakheart was a betrayer, then it is irrelevant whether or not he was wearing the white cloak, but there is a reason why he might have chosen to wear it. Oakheart thought of women as stronger than men. He admired the strength of Cersei and his own mother. He admired the strength of Lady Olenna Tyrell and the deadly sand snakes. Most of all, he admired the strength of Princess Arianne. The reason that these women crossed his mind was because Oakheart was reflecting on how Myrcella was stronger than Tommen. Oakheart thought of Tommen as a good-hearted little man who always tried his best, but Oakheart remembered how Tommen had wept when they had shipped Myrcella off to Dorne, whereas Myrcella never shed a tear, because she was braver than her brother, and brighter and more confident as well. Her wits were quicker, her courtesies more polished, and nothing ever daunted her, not even Joffrey. Oakheart was madly in love with Arianne, and she told him that Myrcella would give them the leave to marry, that he could have her and his white cloak, and it tore him apart to admit as much, but he told Arianne that he wanted that. Sir Areo Hotah sank to one knee and told Arianne that Myrcella is the elder and better suited to the crown. Who will defend her rights if not her Kingsguard? My sword, my life, my honor, all belong to her. And to you, my heart's delight. So, did Aerys have a change of heart off-screen and tell Doran about the plan? Maybe, but I don't think so. I believe that Oakheart wore the white cloak that day because he finally felt like he had a purpose. He had sworn to protect his queen, Myrcella, at the request of his love, Arianne. Before he charged Hotah, Oakheart gave Arianne one last longing look, then put his golden spurs into his horse and charged. Arianne wondered if Hotah had charged in hopes of saving her, or if he had done it to escape her, to wash out his dishonor with his life's blood. In the end, Arianne concluded that Oakheart had loved her, and he had died for her, and I agree. That leaves us with just 3 other co-conspirators, Dre, Silva, and Garen. In Arianne's first sample chapter of The Winds of Winter, she thought about her 3 friends who had been a part of her since she was little, trusted confidants who had shared her dreams and secrets, cheered her when she was sad, and helped her face her fears. One of them had betrayed her, she thought, but she missed them all the same. So which one was it? When they first rode up to the pole boat, Arianne saw none of the crew. Then the door slammed open and out into the sunlight stepped Areo Hotah, long axe in hand. Garen had been yelling out for the crew to wake up and jerked to a halt when he saw Hotah. Dre said, "There's the last face I'd hoped to see." Since they both were surprised, I don't think either of them was the betrayer. But I don't think it was Silva either. As we went over earlier, George R. R. Martin was very heavy-handed with the betrayer stuff, and not to be rude, but these 3 characters are nobodies. As Doran himself said, her fellow plotters were no more than foolish children, which in and of itself is evidence that none of them had been the betrayer. Arianne considered them her dearest friends of girlhood, as dear to her as her cousin Tyene, so Arianne would be sad if she found out that it was one of them. But George R. R. Martin is too careful a writer to oversell the betrayer question on a minor character. So who was it? I actually just said her name in passing. Tyene. You can go have a lot of fun at Tinfoil Town speculating that Tyene's mother is Septa Lemore and the betrayal related to Fagon, but I can't go there with you for various reasons. So let's put that stuff aside and focus entirely on the evidence that George R. R. Martin has given us. In Hotah's first chapter, Doran met with 3 of the Sand Snakes one by one. Obara told him that she wanted to get revenge for Oberyn by starting a war with the Iron Throne by attacking Old Town. Nymeria told Doran that she only wanted vengeance, that 4 lives would suffice for her. Jaime and Cersei as payment for Ilya's children, Tywin for Ilya herself, and Tommen for Oberyn. Tyene told Doran that she also wanted war, but not by attacking Old Town. Tyene wanted to fight the war on their home turf of Dorne. In order to do that, they would have to lure their enemies to Dorne, and Oberyn had told her how to do it. They could lure their enemies to Dorne by marrying Myrcella to Trystane. After Doran spoke to the Sand Snakes, he had them imprisoned so that they could not cause any trouble. But Tyene's conversation with Doran is proof that the idea of marrying Myrcella to Trystane is not a new one by Arianne alone. It is something that even Oberyn had discussed with Tyene. Arianne told Oakheart that she and Tyene were of an age, that they had been close as sisters since they were little girls, and they had no secrets between them. On top of that, Arianne told Oakheart that Doran was trying to take Myrcella back to the Water Gardens to keep her away from those who'd seek to crown her, and that Prince Oberyn Viper would have placed the crown upon her head himself if he had lived. So, Arianne and Tyene were best friends, as close as sisters. They had no secrets between them, and they were both aware of Oberyn's idea of crowning Myrcella. It's reasonable to assume that Arianne and Tyene had talked about the plan before Tyene was locked up, and she might not have been the only Sand Snake involved. Doran told Obara that Arianne had carried out her plot as much for her as for herself, implying that Obara might have been in on the discussions as well. But I don't think Obara was a betrayer. There was one more paragraph to go over. Arianne sat in her prison wondering who it could be. She thought about Darkstar, then Oakheart, as we already went over. Eventually, she told herself that it was no good dwelling endlessly on Ser Aerys, and she made herself think about the Sand Snakes, Tyene especially. Arianne loved all her bastard cousins, but Tyene had always been the one she loved the most, the sweet sister that she never had. Arianne, her 3 friends, and Tyene had been a company of 5. They splashed in the pools and fountains of the Water Gardens and rode into battle, perched on one another's naked backs. She and Tyene had learned to read together, learned to ride together, learned to dance together. When they were 10, Arianne had stolen a flagon of wine and the 2 of them had gotten drunk together. They shared meals and beds and jewelry. They would have shared their first man as well, but Dre got too excited and spurted all over Tyene's fingers the moment she drew him from his breeches. The more she thought about her cousins, the more the princess missed them. Then she realized that they might be right below her in another cell of the spear tower. Arianne pounded the floor with the heel of her sandal and spent half the night hanging out the window. "Tyene," she called. "Tyene, are you there? Obara, Nim, can you hear me? Alaria, anyone? Tyene." So Arianne was sitting there in a room, imprisoned, and she was wondering who the betrayer was. She thought about Darkstar and Oakheart as options. Then she made herself think of something happier, and she thought of Tyene. But it never crossed her mind, even once, that Tyene might have been the betrayer. In the Winds of Winter, she has come to believe that it must have been one of her other 3 closest friends, but my money is on Tyene since she presumably knew about the plot, and she is the last person whom Arianne would suspect, thus making her the most satisfying payoff for the 8 times over someone told mystery. Let me know who you think it was in the comments section, and one last fun fact before we go. Before Arianne's group rode to the pole boat with Myrcella, they met at a well at Shandystone. That well had gone dry 100 years before, so its guardians had departed for some wetter place, and the sands had crept back in to reclaim its own. But the ruins were still beautiful. Arianne got there just as the sun was going down, and the ruins seemed aglow. Her friend Dre said that it was lovely there, and asked Arianne how she had known of the place. Arianne told him that her uncle Oberyn had brought her there, with their cousins, Sorella and Tyene.